I'm here. Just give me a minute. You go ahead.
Okay. How did that happen? Whoops. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Monday, March the 3rd, 2025. Individuals interested in participating in this evening's meeting were eligible to register online using the delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. Any written comments received prior to the commencement of this evening's meeting have been circulated to members of council prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. The meeting live stream and archive videos are available at www.kitchener.ca/watchnow. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. And now I'd like to invite everyone to stand as they're able for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to those who joined in singing. It was probably the most that we've ever had as I looked around the room, and I think, sadly, the events that are occurring in the world around us, particularly south of the border, are bringing out the best of our Canadian pride right now, which is excellent. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that on March the 8th, 2025, the City of Kitchener will be joining others in recognizing International Women's Day, when we celebrate the remarkable achievements, contributions, and resilience of those who identify as women and girls in Kitchener and around the world. International Women's Day serves as an opportunity to reflect on the progress that has been made and continues to highlight the urgent need to accelerate the work that remains to be done to advance gender equality. The theme for 2025, #AccelerateAction, serves as a powerful call to address the barriers that still hinder the full realization of gender equity. Across the globe, women continue to face systemic discrimination, violence, and unequal opportunities. To truly accelerate progress, we must actively address these challenges. We acknowledge that all women do not face the same barriers or the same number of barriers. Race, culture, religion, sexual orientation, ability, and socioeconomic status all intersect to create varied experiences and degrees of oppression. When we unite in solidarity, we understand that there is no universal experience. Collectively, as members of City Council, we recognize the privileged position we hold. We're committed to using the position to drive meaningful change. In support of this year's theme, Accelerate Action, We will continue to push for policies and initiatives that will ensure inclusion and equitable opportunities to uplift and amplify the voices of women and girls who are most marginalized in our city. Let's take this opportunity to reaffirm our collective responsibility in committing to building a world that amplifies the voices of women of all ages, supports their rights, and works towards a future where every woman and girl is treated with dignity, respect, and equity. I wish in particular to take a moment to recognize Councillors Michaud, Johnson, Chapman, and Stretch. Our women councillors who inspire change, champion progress, and uplift our communities every day. Their leadership is an inspiration to young women and girls who aspire to serve our community. To each of our women councillors, thank you for your tireless efforts, your passion, and your commitment to building a better future for all. Your work does not go unnoticed, and your leadership continues to leave a lasting impact on our city. Let us all come together to accelerate action, not just today, but every day, in building a society where gender equity is not just an aspiration, but a reality. I'll now move on to the agenda, and on motion by Councillor Ioannidis, it's moved that the minutes of the regular meeting held February 10th, 2025, as mailed to the mayors and councillors, be accepted. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, please note the communications to file with respect to the 3 flag requests. And there being no presentations tonight, we'll move straight into delegations. To all delegations that will be presenting this evening, the city values and encourages participation and dialogue in a democratic process that occurs in council and committee meetings and through written submissions and correspondence. It's important that these interactions remain respectful towards other members of the public, staff, and council. In cases where dialogue is not respectful or a delegate interrupts the mayor or councillors, staff, or other delegations, makes derogatory statements about the mayor, councillors, staff, or others that is disrespectful, or uses hate speech or language that is considered harmful or defamatory, the chair may interject and take necessary actions to maintain a respectful and inclusive environment for everyone, which could involve removal from the meeting. One last reminder, delegations are permitted to address council for a maximum of 5 minutes, which will be displayed on the screens in front of you. When there is 30 seconds remaining in your time, you will hear a small audio tone that will signal 30 seconds remaining. Please take that time to conclude your presentation, as there will be a second tone at the completion of your time, and the microphones will automatically turn off shortly after the exceeded 5-minute mark. Lastly, please do not take offense if following your presentation there's no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from you, our community members. And now we'll move on to item 6.1, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for 4611 King Street East. I'll note that there is a written submission from Mike Malloy on behalf of the Pine Grove Neighborhood Association, and we'll also note the addendum report that was included in the agenda this day for council's consideration. There are 2 delegations this evening, and the first delegation is Mr. Brandon Flewelling. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm Brandon Flewelling with GSP Group, here again to speak to you about 4611 King Street and the Planning Act applications in front of you. So this is our 3rd time bringing this item back to council for consideration. Tonight I'm joined by David from LJM, and Mr. Meehan will likely walk through those doors as I'm speaking. He is a little bit delayed, but it's definitely on his way. So since we were last here, we have further taken the comments provided by council and members of the community and taken another look at the plan overall and have proposed a further revised development concept. As you recall, the original development proposal consisted of 726 total residential units. The new proposal in front of you today will see a total of 545 residential units. So a very significant reduction in the total number of units on site. Further, the internal tower, the tower furthest away from King Street, has been reduced down to a total proposal of 14 stories. Previously, the original application had this tower at 22 stories, and then it was revised to 18, and now we've looked at it further and propose a further reduction down to 14 stories total for the rear tower. One of the comments that we heard loud and clear from council and from the public was about the parking ratio on the property. With the revised unit counts, the proposed residential parking ratio would now be 0.85 spaces per unit. Essentially what that means is there'd be 545 residential units. Of that, 82 would not have a parking space, if you want to look at just pure numbers. Further, the office use that was proposed within the building as part of a mixed-use building, there's retail at ground floor, then there's a proposal for some office space and residential above. We've removed the office component from the proposal. Part of this is to help lessen the overall activity on the site that might have been a driver for additional traffic coming to the site. And part of the compromise of lowering the rear tower and reducing the total number of units was to remove that office component and reutilize that space as a residential component. Another comment heard loud and clear from council was the consideration of affordable units within this development. Originally, we had discussed the provision of 10 affordable units to be entered into a program with the Region of Waterloo. LJM is now willing to offer 20 affordable units, again, for that inclusion within a regional program for affordable housing. Past comments as well talked about activities on the site and is there sufficient amenity space. The amount of amenity space hasn't changed in this proposal. The finer details of that will be subject to site plan approval, but certainly I want council to know that we've heard those comments and will continue to work with staff should these applications be approved to really ensure that the on-site amenity space is not only meeting the zoning requirements, but meeting the requirements of the individual residents on site. We think the changes put forward, certainly from the beginning until the location that we are at today, have been quite significant. There's been a very significant reduction in the total density on site. This results in a higher parking yield on the property, and I know we've heard these things very loud and clear. Certainly, we remain in support of the staff report and recommendation as in front of you tonight. I think we've come a long way, and we would be looking for council approval of the application as in front of you this evening. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and we'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. We do have some questions for you, and I'll start with Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, and appreciate some of the conversations that we have had to help shift to where you guys are. Remind me again, you specified the rear tower would be 14 stories. The front tower would be what?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the front tower will remain at 26 stories in height.
26, okay. And originally, just to go back to what the initial application was that was staff supported, the front and back tower. So the back I remember is 22, and the front was?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 33.
33. So we've gone from 33 to 26 and 14. And the initial parking ratio was?
0.57. Through you, Mr. Mayor, 0.57.
0.57 to 0.85%. And again, I acknowledge the conversations we've had regarding the affordable housing, and before it was 0, and now it's 20 affordable units that's being proposed.
That's correct.
And that would be in conjunction with whatever requirements are set out by the Region of Waterloo.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Davey.
Yes, thank you. The applicant still hasn't arrived yet, correct? I'm just wondering, the only question I have left after all this, and there's been a considerable amount of work done, should council still decide not to support this, and if you don't know the answer to this question, that's fine too, has your applicant indicated that he would appeal to the OLT?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that that is definitely a possibility. I think we've made some fairly significant concessions on this application. So I can't say that with 100% certainty, and I wouldn't want to intone that otherwise, but I do think we've made some significant concessions and would have to consider all options if not approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. Councillor Stretch.
Yes, thank you. Is there still a mix of 1-bedroom to 3-bedroom units?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the mix of units is not proposed to change at this point in time. The tower configurations sort of lead to optimal unit layouts, so some of the corner units just end up with a larger footprint. So at this point, the same general mix, I'll say, would remain.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stretch. And those appear to be all the questions, Mr. Flewelling.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Our next delegation is Rolly Galbraith. Sorry, just 1 second, Mr. Galbraith. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Galbraith.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Rolly Galbraith, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak. The zone change application at 4611 King Street East has been debated quite extensively. There are a few opinions that I have difficulty understanding. The planning department suggested that school buses could stop on Highway 8 King Street East, close to the 401 ramp. I do not see this as being a viable solution. An alternate would be for children from a 545-unit development to walk along King Street, around a blind corner, and along Limerick Drive, a safe distance to where school buses could stop. Oh, and Limerick does not have sidewalks. The developer also promotes the green space on the proposed build site because there's no nearby park space. This small space would be like fencing off a small corner of a dog park for your children to play in. I don't think that's very nice. We also have the obvious issues with the lack of parking. This site is well outside of a major transit hub with difficult access to biking or walking trails. People will need private vehicles to get around. And I can see why Councillor Snyder made the statement that 99 times out of 100 he agrees with the recommendations of the planning department. But he is having difficulty understanding this decision. I think a lot of people would agree with Councillor Snyder. It has been suggested that perhaps a majority of the new residents will work from home. Be realistic. There are no amenities or grocery stores that are walkable. The nearest convenience store is a half-a-kilometer walk away in Cambridge, across a live traffic lane entering the 401. Walkability here is very challenging. And there seems to be undue pressure to offer affordable housing units. I would suggest that nearby public transit and walkable amenities are a priority for a desirable location for affordable housing. This site does not qualify, in my opinion. And next, we have an overstated reliance on the future LRT. City staff suggested 5 to 8 years. The mayor suggested 10 years. At the 401 underpass, King Street East cannot accommodate the addition of a train. In addition, a bridge across the Grand River will have to be built. No small feat in itself. All of this would require major planning and then finding a couple $2 billion worth of funding. Many of you will be as old and gray as I am before you get to ride the LRT to Cambridge. It really is too bad that the region was unable or unwilling to attend this review and offer a conclusive traffic study and help us better understand why they felt it necessary to encourage the developer to purchase access into a small residential community. Is the access onto Highway 8 King Street East at this location not adequate? And do not let this do not let this project establish a precedent for height and density on the side of King Street that backs into low-rise residential properties. This site should remain commercial zoning. And finally, we have the ever-present threat of the OLT, where there's a record of 96% support for the developer. It seems that if you bring an outrageous proposal to council and negotiate to a slightly less outrageous proposal, you either get your way or you get a direct pass to the OLT. If we do not take the chance, we have a 100% chance of losing. Just imagine if you had a loved one with a 4% chance of survival. Well, we love our community. Remember, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And another final point of interest, the Castle Life property at 4553 King Street East has recently closed. I would suggest that this commercial property is probably a victim of the new traffic pattern on this part of King Street East. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galbraith. We do have some questions for you. Councillor Davey. Oops. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith, for your presentation. My dad was a big fan of the saying "lipstick on a pig" as well, so you just reminded me of him. I just wanted to hone in on one question. You did raise the OLT, and I just want to be clear that you understood from before that it's not going to OLT doesn't mean the negotiated deal that we have on the table is necessarily what goes to the OLT. It could be the original one that first came to council before. You understand that's a possibility as well, correct?
I do understand that totally, but I do know if this is not rejected, we lose 100%. I would rather have 4% than 0.
So that was my question. My question is, you're comfortable knowing the odds that you would still, if you were in our position, you would still decline the application?
And I understand the repercussions that would possibly be available, but I would certainly hope that the OLT would take into consideration many of the factors that have been stated here time and time again.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask you the same question, Mr. Galbraith, about the possibility that this, you've said it, lipstick on a pig. In this case, it could end up being a much uglier pig than what's being proposed right now. 33-story and potentially a 22-story in the rear, but you've answered that question. The other one I'll ask is, again, because we have to understand whether the residents feel comfortable. I get that the residents, taking the chance that this could end up going in a different direction than what the neighborhood wants and having a much taller development, they're willing to take that risk. Are you comfortable with the potential loss of the 20 affordable units as well? I did a quick estimate based on a 10-year horizon. It may end up being more than that, but 10-year horizon means $1.3 million of subsidized rent. Are you comfortable with that as well?
I personally do not feel that is suitable for affordable housing, and I forget what else you were saying.
No, you answered the other one
But,
to Councillor Davies' question.
No, I think there may be legislation or suggestions somewhere that a maximum height of 8 stories, and if we go in with this one at 20-odd stories, that would certainly establish that precedent of much taller buildings down our side of King Street.
So going along with the same line of logic, if this goes in favor of the developer and they get a favorable ruling from the OLT and they're allowed to build a 33-story and a 22-story, are you comfortable with that potential precedence along King Street as well?
I would much rather take a chance on winning at the OLT than having this high-rise building.
Okay.
And I feel it's unsafe to have it there.
Okay, no, I fear, I'm sorry, I appreciate, your logic, where you're coming from. I just want to understand where your context of comfort will be. Our job is to make sure that, as residents, you understand all consequences that would be with it as well. You said that you feel this is not the appropriate site for affordable housing units. Can you specify a little more?
Expand on that, it's not walkable. There are no amenities around, there's no grocery stores. And I would think that if you have affordable housing, some of those people may not have availability of private transportation. So I think it should be, affordable housing should have access to public transit. And I think it should be within a major transit hub. I don't know, maybe I'm being prejudiced, but that's my opinion.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rolly. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for coming out again on behalf of the community, for voicing your concerns and your opinions. I'm hoping that most of us around the horseshoe hear the concerns, because they are valid concerns. And so I just want to say thank you for what you've done for the last, I guess, 3 months, right? 4 months we've been at this?
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Galbraith, I just want to follow up, because I guess the one part I'm struggling with is, like right now, we were at 26 we were at 33 and 22 stories. You're down 7 on the one building and down 8 on the building closest to the homes. And potentially we'll lose all that. So I'm just trying to understand where you say you'll still potentially you have a chance at getting something, despite sort of the history of what happens at these OLT hearings.
If it's 20 stories or 30 stories or 40 stories is somewhat irrelevant. You still have the safety factors for people trying to get in and out of that property. It is a dangerous property. It is unsafe for children to walk on King Street and up Limerick to get the bus. It's unsafe. My personal opinion, I don't think is as important as the safety aspects of this project, and I feel it is unsafe.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Singh, bring forward the planning recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rising from the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman for Council's consideration.
Now, are you moving the revised report?
The revised report, yes.
Okay,
with the
thank you.
amendments. Thank you.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded. Are there any comments? Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask questions of staff?
By all means.
Thank you. So, I know we all received the email from John earlier this week regarding the MTO saying that they wouldn't allow a U-turn at the on and off ramps, and there was a suggestion that the region could consider a U-turn at Preston and Fountain at the bottom of the hill. Is that what I understood correctly?
Mr. Schneider.
Thank you. Through the mayor, that is correct. The region has said that the U-turns at the MTO were functional designs only. Those were plans that were done in 2022. They were preliminary, but now with this news from the MTO that they won't allow those U-turns at their intersections, that Shantz Hill and Preston Parkway would be the next logical U-turn location.
Do we know how far away that is from this proposed development?
Through the mayor, it's approximately 700 meters.
Okay. Okay. And I was also looking into or reading the email from MTO. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is the TIS older than 3 years?
No, through the mayor, the TIS is not older than 3 years. However, it's an advisory comment. because the developer had noted that it might take 2 years before they can even start to market this. So we know that this project is not likely shovel-ready for this year or next year. So they're advising the applicant that if site plan approval is maybe 5 or 6 years from now, the MTO could require them to do an updated TIS if over 3 years from this time has elapsed.
Okay, all right. So no U-turns along that road. They got to go 700 meters to to make a U-turn to go back up into the city. I got that correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we go into comments, does anyone else have questions? Okay, Councillor O'Dooney?
Thank you very much, Chair. So from our experience, when an application is appealed and it goes to OLT, what factors do they usually look at when they're making their decisions at OLT?
Stevenson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor. So a hearing on appeal would be a hearing de novo. That means that the appellant would be responsible for presenting their position for appealing the application. And in this case, if it was appealed by the applicant, they would be responsible for bringing forward planning, transportation, and other evidence that would be required to support their position. The OLT would look at the entire planning framework in Ontario, so starting with the Planning Act, the provincial planning statement, the regional official plan, the City of Kitchener official plan, and our zoning bylaw regulations. So a hearing de novo really is reconsideration based on new evidence of all of the planning matters. So the discussion earlier tonight, discussions in this council chamber, although we provide the minutes as well as the video recording for all appeals, the OLT doesn't necessarily have to have regard for discussion in this chamber or council's decision. It is a hearing de novo.
Thanks for that. Are residents given a chance to make a delegation at OLT?
Again, through the mayor, the OLT rules and procedures have changed recently as a result of changes to the Planning Act within all of Ontario, not just in Kitchener. A resident can apply to be a participant. So in an OLT hearing, there are two status: a party. A party is, in Ontario now, is a landowner, an applicant, or an approval authority, a planning authority, so the City of Kitchener. A party can call evidence and cross-examine. A participant, because there are no third-party appeals, so residents cannot appeal a decision, they can only be a participant. And participants are entitled to submit written evidence that is considered by the OLT. They cannot provide any planning evidence as a party would, and they cannot cross-examine any evidence.
Okay. Now, this third question, I'm not sure how to ask it, but I'll just throw it out anyway, and hopefully we'll figure it out. When the application goes to the OLT, is it the original application, the one that came to us the first time? Is it the revised application that goes across to them?
Again, through the mayor, it would be the original application. Okay. There are also parameters that other recent OLT matters have taken. For example, we have a current matter where the original application was actually amended to increase building height and floor area so it was in addition to what the application was. That's the first time in my experience we've seen that, so it's certainly not the norm, but it is a legal possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Dooney. Councillor Chapman, would you have questions? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered, in the most recent application, or the modified version of the proposal, did the setbacks to the Limerick properties change at all?
Through the mayor, no, it was just reductions in the tower heights, not the placement of the building.
Okay, and my other question has to do with the U-turn information that we have now. Does that change what staff's view of this proposal is at all, with that change, that there can't be a U-turn right outside of the building?
So through the mayor, if this were to be developed prior to the construction of ION, there would be a U-turn opportunity right outside of the site. It's immediately adjacent to the site, so it's still going to be difficult to travel across 2 lanes of King Street to use it, and it's unsignalized. So there are opportunities for a U-turn now prior to the construction of ION Phase 2. But if ION Phase 2 were to proceed and it is constructed in the center line, then we know that U-turns will be a reality along that entire King Street corridor, because if you do have that type of infrastructure where the LRT is running center line, we know that you can't do U-turns other than designated places, similar to what's in front of Grand River Hospital. So it's not uncommon that you'd have to go further to do a U-turn at a signalized intersection. It's just because there's the 401 overpass, it makes that distance a bit longer at 700 meters.
So that doesn't change your assessment of the proposal?
Through the mayor, it didn't change anything for our transportation staff, for the region's transportation staff, and that's who I'm listening to in terms of transportation comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud, you're up next. Your comment? Okay, well, you're still up then. You're the only person in the queue. Go ahead. Oh, Councillor Johnson, you have, oh, hold on. Oh, no, you're right, sorry. You were on the second screen. Councillor Schneider, you have questions? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for all the work that's gone into this. And as I ask this question, please know I'm not challenging you, I'm just seeking clarification. So when matters go to the OLT, decisions are based purely on planning principles. Is that correct?
Sorry. Mr. Stevenson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it is a planning matter that is considered by the OLT. When I spoke about parties can present different areas of evidence. So we always say that planning is a balance of interests. That would be true for an OLT hearing as well. I would suspect that on an application of this magnitude, likely there would be urban design, transportation, and planning evidence. So the OLT would have regard for all evidence that is submitted and reviewed as part of the hearing, and it would be up to the appellant and any other parties to determine what evidence they would be deciding to put forward as part of their case. So it's not just strictly land use planning, it would be all of the broader topics, likely as part of the evidence that we've been discussing for the last few months on this application.
Okay, and again, not challenging, just seeking clarification, because you make your recommendation based on your professional work, and it has to meet standards, or if it doesn't, you can't bring forth the recommendation. So I'm just wondering how you were able to reach the conclusion that with the U-turn challenges and with the walkability and safety challenges, that this project met the planning requirements needed for a recommendation for approval?
Yes, so thanks for the question. So through the mayor, the review that was done by our city transportation staff, the MTO, and the Region of Waterloo suggested that those review bodies were acceptable of the TIS that the applicant proposed. There are acknowledgements in my staff report that talk about the cycling facilities and the walking facilities, and that it's not ideal, but it's not enough to recommend refusal based on that. It still meets a lot of different planning principles. It still does have access to transit. And we still think that those movements are going to need to work on the south side of King Street, not just on this property, but every property in this stretch from Sports World to the 401, once the LRT comes in, is going to need to function with some sort of U-turn. So it's not specific to this property. That infrastructure is going to change the movements, and future infrastructure such as a overpass to 401 East that could eliminate drivers getting off Highway 8, getting onto King Street, and then getting onto 401 West. Or sorry, I should have said 401 West earlier. An on-ramp to 401 West is going to change the transportation layout of the surrounding lands for all of the properties on the south side of King Street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider. Councillor Stretcher, your question? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My question is for staff. When we go to OLT, what is the cost to our taxpayer? Is that something that we,
Mr. Stevenson?
Through the mayor, so I won't hazard to give you an estimate on the cost, but I will explain to you the cost that would be the responsibility of the city of Kitchener depending on what avenue is explored. Staff have made a recommendation for approval and have negotiated a revised recommendation that is continuing to be supported by staff. If council took a position other than what was recommended by professional planning staff, you would have to retain your own professional planner in order to support that opinion. The cost of retaining that planner would be on the City of Kitchener in order to bring forward that case. Same is true for any other evidence. If there was a case for transportation, urban design, or other matters, expert opinion evidence would be required, and a respected professional would have to be retained by the city in order to support that position.
thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions leading from Councillor Deneau. He mentioned with the MTO that there could be incident where additional TIS is required if there's a longer horizon for the development to proceed. So presumably, what if the TIS the study is not favorable for development such as this? What would happen then to the satisfaction of the MTO?
Mr. Schneider?
So through the mayor, the MTO had indicated earlier that they defer to the region of Waterloo because the access is off of a regional road. The MTO doesn't really have the ability to prevent developments after or before they've been approved in this manner if they don't have the access. Some properties in Ontario have access right onto a provincial highway, like smaller towns. But in our case, we have the upper tier municipality that has access control on King Street East. So in those scenarios, the MTO could have control over whether to allow that development. But in this case, they're deferring to the region of Waterloo. And it's the region that has said that they're accepting of this access, they're accepting of these movements. But yes, if it goes longer than 3 years, the MTO could require an updated TIS for posterity through the site plan process.
And it's the presumption that also that the region is aware that it would be a 750 meter distance before a U-turn is feasible for any traffic originating from this development.
Yes, through the mayor, the region was copied on the MTO comments, and we have discussed it since the comments have been received.
And there has been nothing back from the region?
Yeah,
Any concerns?
Yeah, through the mayor, they've indicated that the next logical U-turn location would be Preston Parkway in Shants Hill.
Okay, Garrett, you mentioned potential costs related to, if there is an OLT appeal, where we would have to hire outside planning expertise to make an argument in favor of the decision that council chooses to make. Would we also have to hire outside counsel, or can we use the city's counsel?
Mr. Stevenson or Ms. McDonald?
Through the mayor, it's not mandatory you hire outside counsel. Sometimes we do, only because of a number of hearings going on and resource availability and workload. So that just becomes the situation of the day, would have to be assessed and determined if we needed outside counsel.
Okay. And the other is, if we were to win, I want to presume either scenario, if we were to win or if the applicant wins, I guess the side that loses pays for the legal fees or costs as well on the other side?
Through the mayor, not typically. There is a mechanism through the OLT if there's been what they call sort of undue behavior. You can ask for some costs to be awarded, but typically the costs are of each party's.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Deneau, do you have additional questions or comments? Comments? Councillor Ioannidis, questions or comments? Questions? Question? Go ahead, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Chair. Okay, sorry, I was answering a question to Councillor Johnson while Councillor Singh was raising some questions. So if we go to the OLT, our own legal staff would fight against our own legal staff? Because if our staff is going in, wouldn't they be on the side of staff?
Ms. McDonald?
Actually, through the mayor, no, that's not the case. In fact, legal would have to cross-examine staff that they work with regularly. So we'd be on the opposite side of a staff if they have a different position than council. So we would ultimately represent council.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have questions before I go to comments? No? So Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank the Pine Grove Community Association for allowing myself to be part of this. As I indicated in an email earlier this month, I've missed this aspect of some of my roles in my previous life. And so I greatly have enjoyed this, surprisingly so. And I want to thank, the developer, the applicant for willing to meet a couple times and agreeing to bring the back of the property down and, including some affordable units. This is my first real big rodeo of a challenging development. And so I've definitely learned a lot. I want to thank my colleagues who have been super, super supportive in answering my questions or concerns and giving me some guidance. In the end, I cannot, in good conscience, support this development. We have a whole plan that's going to be coming forward in the next few months called Growing Together East, and this is 100% outside of what our staff are bringing forward as far as development around major transit stations and where we are looking to increase our households. This is not an ideal location. I don't want to rehash everything that we've talked around this horseshoe I've said, but I'm going a little bit. There's no park space. It's not walkable. There's no grocery store within, I think it's 3 kilometers. What's that? Costco's not a grocery store. As the delegate earlier had indicated, those who are living in affordable units, not to paint everybody with the same stroke, but more than likely they won't have access to a vehicle. And so where are they going to go and get their groceries from if public transit is not readily available to them? The nearest U-turn potentially is going to be 700 meters down the road. And I know Fountain is already busy from people going out to Conestoga College, it's a busy road. And if I were to support this, I believe I'd be doing a disservice to our community, to my ward, but also to the city. I don't want to set a precedent in putting, what did I say, dimes in postage stamp lot sizes, and I believe this is what this is. We have a whole lot of other room on the other side that we're going to be looking at development in the next 10 to 15 years, and I believe any proposal is appropriate for that side of the road. And so, again, I thank everybody for their time, but I cannot support this. And, I believe the community knows there is a risk that if this goes to OLT, if it is denied, that it's going to be a much worse outcome. I don't want to speak for all the residents on Limerick, but, from all indications, they're willing to take that risk. And so, I hope my fellow councillors come along with me, because you know what? Not every piece of land that we have available in the community, in the city, is right for development. It's really not. We have to be sensible, and we have to be, it's gotta fit in. And this is not about NIMBYism whatsoever. It's just making sure we're doing what's right. And this is not a good development. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Councillor Michaud.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank Councillor Deneau for his comments. I concur with everything you said. I do acknowledge the developer for, working to lower the height and make some accommodations. But at the end of the day, this is not the right location for any development. It's pretty much on the on-ramp, beside the on-ramp to the 401, and I just can't see this being a livable space for anyone. And to Councillor Deneau's reference of growing together, this would be the exact opposite of what we should be looking at. So I can't support this tonight either.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. The 20 affordable units really causes me to pause because, if we go to the OLT, there's absolutely no reason for the developer to hold those affordable units. And although it's, maybe not in a downtown core or close to a grocery store, I think having choice as to, where you can afford to live is good. And we should be looking at affordable housing across the entire city. Long-term plans, I do see there being public transit in the area. And I do see, the market changing and what's available in the community. So, I'm leaning towards supporting this, but I do really respect where council's direction is going. Hearing Councillor Deneau talk about not wanting to support it, I do really respect that, and I think there's valuable learning in that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Stretch. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Councillor Deneau, thank you. What a tremendous amount of work you put into this, and you have kept us up to date with everything and made sure that we knew there were emails, and you've shared all that information, and it's critical in making a decision here. Going to the OLT is costly for the city, it's costly for the developer, and we do take a gamble. Mr. Galbraith has stated that he's willing to take that gamble. And Mr. Mayor, I wonder if it's okay to ask the people who are in the gallery here for this item if we could get a show of hands to see if they feel the same way as Mr. Galbraith.
We normally wouldn't do that. Everybody would have had an opportunity to delegate. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to lose the opportunity to acknowledge the hard work by Councillor Deneau. It's not easy when you're facing with a development of this size in a low-rise or close proximity to a low-rise neighborhood, because anywhere you go, it's going to be some sense of disruption to the natural fabric of what that community was. If it's not necessarily on traffic on those streets, it's still the site within of a tall building that's quite different than what those residents have been so for long used to. And I respect the concerns laid out by the Pine Grove community about not necessarily having the adequate green space in this area for development of this size. I think that was one of the initial pauses on my part, where I did see a concern along with the aspects of transportation as well, the impact of this many vehicles having to go further down in Cambridge to do a U-turn. But like Councillor Stretch, where it gives me an alternative pause is the affordable housing. We continue to talk about around this horseshoe the dire desperation of affordable housing in our community. It's not for us to decide where someone should have the right to live or not live. The fact of the matter is there are people that are living in tents, that there's thousands of residents that are on a waiting list to find subsidized housing that have no other choice. I think many of us in this horseshoe have a lot of choices in life. Those are residents who have very few. So knowing that there would be possibly 20 families with a decision that we make that if it goes contrary to the staff recommendation, it would likely get defeated at at the OLT. One, the ratios of applications that are towards in favor of the developer are 97 or 96 to 4%, let alone on top of it, something that's supported by our staff. I understand our residents here in this chamber are comfortable with us turning this down and taking a risk and seeing what the OLT does, but the evidence is before us, seeing past applications. And that too, on top of it, again, with an application that's supported by staff and an application that has been further reduced substantively from where it initially started, and on top of it, having the affordable housing component as well. I don't need to wonder what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. The likely scenario will be the decision in favor of the developer, in which case it would be a development that would be what we were necessarily comfortable with. Tower heights that were much smaller, the reduction by 6 floors and 7 floors. Parking ratios gone up from 0.59 to 0.85. Affordable housing from 0 to 20. So knowing that and knowing past record of the OLT, I'm leaning towards supporting the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Michaud, you said you had a question? Okay, go ahead before I continue with comments.
We're talking a lot about affordable housing, and I understand that. And then we make reference of people sleeping in tents and going into affordable housing. What is the ratio of affordable housing? What is considered an affordable rent in this region? And so what would the rent be in a high rise of that magnitude as affordable?
Mr. Stevenson, can you respond to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the applicant has indicated that the affordable units that they're proposing are in partnership with the region of Waterloo. So those units, it would be a partnership with the region that would depend on exactly what the arrangement might particularly be. Depending on the average rent. So in our region, the latest numbers for this year, based on 30% of gross household income for low and moderate income renter households, is $2,040. But the region may choose to lease these units and rent them out at their own rate. So what the applicant is proposing is a partnership with Region of Waterloo Housing. It's not something that we're specifically or directly involved in.
Okay, my comment is I think we use the term.
Sorry, you've already made a comment.
All right.
I'm just trying to,
Well, okay.
yeah, take,
For a point of personal privilege though, because
No.
Councillor Michaud did make a comment in reference to what I was saying. If you would allow me to go do a quick clarification.
I'm not finished.
sorry. Councillor Michaud, you have more questions?
I just have, well, not a question, I have a comment.
Okay, but you had already made comments earlier. Sorry, I'm just trying to be fair to everybody.
Yeah,
Councillor Singh, specifically to the point that Councillor Michaud made.
Yes, regarding people living in tents, Councillor Michaud, with great respect, and I value your opinions quite a bit. I agree with you, this development necessarily won't be helping directly someone living in a tent, but my reference was housing affordability along the continuum, and anywhere we help along that continuum will ultimately help someone that's living in a tent also. That's where the comment I was making.
Okay. Okay, folks, we're not going to have a debate between members of council. Sorry, sir, I'm trying to run the meeting here, so I'd ask you to please be respectful. Mr. Stevenson, you wanted to add something?
Sorry, through the mayor, just for a point of clarity, I wanted to confirm the affordability rate is based on the number of bedrooms. So based on the latest numbers, a bachelor is 1,164, one bedroom 1,346, two bedroom is 1,658, and three bedroom is 2,039. So there is a range of affordability based on the number of bedrooms. Just wanted to offer that point of clarity.
Oh, sorry, that's based on that 30% income number, but as you indicated, the region at times does provide rental subsidies over and above that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Michaud, I will give you a short opportunity to respond. Okay, Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I want to start off by, expressing, to the developer that it's not lost on me that you made significant concessions. I do appreciate the amount of concessions that you made. In fact, you've probably been one of the better ones that come to here in offering concessions. At the same time, I'm very torn because I know we need for affordable housing, and there's 20 units. But at the same time, I feel that there is types of lots in this community that I feel just don't work. And this happens to be one of them. Like, I just feel like it just doesn't fit right. I mean, I think in the planning principles, it makes a lot of sense and all that stuff, but I really feel it doesn't make sense. So that's the reason why I won't support it. But I want to say to the developer, you did hire a great consultant. I think he did a fabulous job, and I do appreciate that. But I really hope that that we don't go the route of the OLT. But anyways, with regards to whatever it is, I won't support this.
Thank you, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Davey.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Just going to touch on a couple things. First, thank you, Councillor Deneau. I was going to ask you a question. I thought it was unfair. I was going to ask you whether you thought the average resident was fully aware of the gamble they're taking, and I thought, you know what, that's not really a fair question to ask, but then you mentioned your comments, so thank you. I'm struggling with this one as well. Historically, I tend to be very pragmatic in these decisions. I'm struggling with the affordable piece because on one hand, we all know affordable housing is significant. This is pretty significant affordable housing, to be frank, but I also look at the location that it's on. And in my experience when it comes to affordable housing, one of the key factors is that it has to be walkable. If you're struggling to pay rent at the end of the day, you typically don't have an automobile. And this is not a location that I think you can make work without an automobile. So the affordability factor goes out the window with $1,000 in license fees and gas and everything else that comes with owning an automobile. So I'm okay leaving that off the table. The only other thing I wanted to say is that, again, being totally pragmatic, I think we're going to lose this one. But sometimes you have to support your friend or your constituent when they look you in the eye and they say they know what the challenges are, they know what the potential outcome is, and they want to take the risk anyway. So I won't be supporting the recommendation.
Okay, so there aren't any additional comments. So I'll take the vote now. All those in favor? Sure. And the motion is not successful. Okay, we'll move on then to the next item. 6.2, New Dundee Road Local Improvement. We have two delegations. First one is Charlie Ormston. Mr. Ormston, do you want to just wait a minute till we give people an opportunity to leave? Welcome, Mr. Ormston. Please proceed.
Mayor Verbanovic and members of council, thank you very much for the opportunity of addressing council tonight on this matter. You'll also hear from Mr. Grespin on the financial issue, but I thought it important to give you some background on the property, as well as my commitment to its upkeep and long-term conservation. Hopefully you have received the book I dropped off today, Preserving Our Past, The Ormston Heritage House, written by local historian Ken McLaughlin and Murray Brooksbrink, who is the great-great-great-grandson of the man who built the farmhouse. This property is located on land that was cleared by early settlers from Great Britain, who also created the villages of Blair and Doon. The property at 508 was purchased by Thomas Petter from the estate of John Dearling in December 1845. The stone farmhouse was constructed in 1849 using Scottish stonemasons and is an example of the mid-19th century vernacular home featuring elements influenced by Georgian and classical revival architectural style. In 1957, my parents purchased the property, and I was fortunate to take over ownership of the property upon my father's death in 2010. In 2015, the mayor presented the property with a City of Kitchener Heritage Designation plaque that proudly hangs beside the front door of the farmhouse. There are 9 heritage attributes that have been identified as contributing to the cultural heritage value of the property. Over the course of the last 15 years, I've devoted a tremendous amount of time, effort, and resources to restoring and preserving the home, always respectful of the heritage designation with careful attention to historical detail and long-term conservation. Both the septic system and well have been replaced and upgraded at significant expense. In addition, all of the original stone and brick have been repointed by a qualified stonemason who specializes in historic properties. Every window has been replaced and upgraded to windows approved by the heritage staff. A new roof, paved driveway, and stone walls have been undertaken. Owning an historic home requires a deep passion and willingness to do whatever it takes to adhere to conservation guidelines. This is my 68th year of being involved with 508, and it is my sincere hope that future generations of my family will share the same passion and commitment to the property as I do. Thank you very much for your time and interest. Should you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, we do have some questions for you, Mr. Ormston. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Armstrong, for coming in and taking the time and the book that you shared with everyone. It's lovely. The issue at hand here is the water and sewer hookup, that you already have a septic system and a new well. When did the septic system and the new well, when was that installed or updated?
The last part
The
again?
well, you said you had installed a well and a septic system, and it was updated. When was that updated? When was the well or the septic system updated?
They're almost brand new. They were put in very, very recently.
Right.
And we have no intention to ever, well, we don't need any city services for that property.
But you have no objection with the city services being
Oh, no.
started installing
Oh, of course
there?
not. Absolutely.
No, so that's not why you're here. You just don't want to have to hook up to the system.
That's
Because you
correct.
already have that.
For sure.
And you also have a potential water hookup at the back of your property?
Yes, we do from the subdivision behind. So that's available in the future should someone want to hook into that. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Those are all the questions that we have, Mr. Ormston. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next delegation is Mr. Paul Grespin. Welcome, Mr. Grespan.
Excuse me, Mayor Baranvik and members of Kitchener Council. My name is Paul Grespan. I'm appearing this evening on behalf of Charlie Ormston, who was just presented. Thank you for the opportunity to address Council on this particular issue this evening. Thank you also to Councillor Christian Michaud, who took the time from her busy schedule to meet with Charlie and I at 508 New Dundee Road and tour the home and property. Council should have before it my letter of February 12, 2025, which I believe is self-explanatory. Important points to consider. The petition for local improvement was made by other landowners to the east of this property who wish to redevelop their lands into multiple lots or units. My count on 2 of the properties to the east is approximately 186 units. And this is according to the plan we received in the drawing circulated by the city. It is these lands that are the beneficiary of the local improvement, not 508. It should be the developers of these lands that bear the cost of servicing those lands, including the cost of getting those services to their lands. The house at 508 New Dundee Road has a heritage designation and really practically cannot be developed or redeveloped. To be completely transparent, there is a narrow strip of land across the rear of the property that arguably has development potential. However, given the severity of the slopes, so there's about a 60-foot differential, and the narrow depth, it isn't practical nor economically feasible to do so. In any event, Mr. Ormston has no intention of development of these lands, as he believes it will completely destroy the nature of the heritage home. As part of the restoration of the house, as you heard, a private sanitary septic system and well were replaced and upgraded at significant cost, and accordingly there is really no need for the municipal services that are being installed in 508, in front of 508 New Dundee Road. Also, as Charlie mentioned, there is a lateral connection to municipal water, not currently connected to the property on the northeast corner of the property that was constructed when the subdivision to the north was developed. So a connection to municipal water on New Dundee Road is simply redundant. The city has the authority under Section 17 of the Ontario Regulation 58606 to reduce, including to zero, the charge applicable to a property where there is no benefit to it, and to increase the charge on other lands that are the beneficiary of the local improvement, which in our view is the 186 lots or units in the proposed development to the east. Mr. Ormston's ask of Council tonight is that you exercise your authority under Regulation 58606 to reduce the local improvement charge for 508 New Dundee to zero in recognition that the proposed local improvement is redundant for 508 New Dundee Road and is generally for the benefit of other property owners to the east of this property who wish to now develop their lands. Thank you for this opportunity to address Council and for your consideration of Mr. Ormston's request. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that Council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Grespan. Councillor Chapman, you have some questions?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question for you or for staff, but I'll start with you since you're at the microphone. Is these, like you mentioned that there's, you could hook up to a system that's behind 508?
For the water, Councillor?
Yeah.
Yes. So when the subdivision was developed, it used to be part of this property. When that subdivision was developed by Activa, a lateral connection was placed down the walkway and is available at the property line, as I understand it, for this property to hook up in the future, should that be desired.
And is that for sewage and water?
Just water.
Just water.
Given the elevation of the land, that is quite high at the back. As I mentioned, it's about 60 feet higher than the rest of the land, but there is a water connection at that location.
And is that water connection, would it potentially serve the properties east of 508?
No, No, I think it's just a single connection for this property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. And I don't know, I should have maybe asked this from the previous delegate. Considering that this is a heritage property, I would assume the properties all around this was originally part of this property.
That's correct.
So it was subdivided by the owners at the time to be in this situation. This is how I'm looking at it.
Yes. There was a draft plan application made, and these properties were excluded from it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Do you have the cost that Mr. Armstrong would have to incur should this go through? If he had to pay, what would he have to pay for this?
I believe it's approximately, maybe staff can confirm, I believe it's approximately $250,000.
Okay, thank you.
That's for both sewer and water.
Mr. Gressman, you may not know this, but staff may have to answer it. But is your client, though, not eligible to potentially apply for a partial rebate through the Court of Revision?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, we'll ask staff that question. Thank you. Those are all the questions we have.
Thank you very much.
Okay, questions of staff. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. The Court of Revision was a question I was going to ask staff, so you could answer that as well. The other property owners that had a petition, are those, any of those properties currently houses where people actually live, or is it just lots?
Mr. Spear?
Through the mayor, generally they are vacant lots. There are a couple in that petition that are already occupied with buildings.
But there's no homes, they're not residential homes?
One is a home.
One, okay. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions that there appear to be at this point in time. Councillor Ioannidis.
Staff.
Go ahead.
Can you confirm what the cost would be for this property owner? 'Cause $250,000 or something like that seems awfully high.
Mr. Spear?
So through the mayor, our cost estimate is currently about $2.5 million for this project, which equates to about $1,500 per linear meter of frontage. It's about 100-meter frontage on this property.
Okay. So with the community improvement, what exactly is being installed out front?
Sorry, Mr. Spear?
Through the mayor, it is a sanitary sewer that runs between Robert Ferry and Pinnacle Drive, as well as a water main.
Okay. Do you want to get a question? You want to ask that question about community revision?
Yes.
Can you address that?
Certainly. So through the mayor, this process, as it's been laid out, right now we are looking for approval for the local improvement to move ahead. Later in the process, we do have an opportunity for Court of Revision. So this is where any property owner can come and challenge the charges that are in front of them. Once the project is substantially complete and we have our project costs, initial invoices will be handed out to each of the property owners. With 508, like we have two other properties that currently have water servicing as well, the only charge that would show up on that invoice would be sanitary sewer. So we'll take that initiative when we put those initial invoices out to make sure that it is representative of the development or the benefit to those properties. At that time, should an owner not agree with the charge or believe that they should be exempt from any part of that, that's when they would come before that Court of Revision.
Okay. And who are the members of Committee of Revision?
I can't recall who council appointed the last time around, but it's members
It's
of
us.
council.
Okay. All right, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Before I continue down the list, though, I'm just going to ask for some further clarification from you, Mr. Spear. So if I understand what your answer to Councillor Ioannidis was and your answer earlier, you indicated it was approximately $1,500 per meter for water and sewer construction, and there's about 100 meters on this property, which would mean about $150,000, correct? If that math is correct, and that's approximate figures, I understand.
Through the mayor, it would be for water and sewer, so it
Right.
would be less than that.
Because there would be a reduction because they already have water in place.
Correct.
And do we know, I mean, is it 50-50 roughly? Is it 64? Like what portion is sewer?
I don't have that firm breakdown at this point in time. We don't have a detailed design advanced to the point where I can answer that with great detail.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not done.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Ioannidis.
I guess, can we as staff, can we as council, I guess, put it some kind of, I don't know what it is, another distinction that this property can't be developed at all? Is there any capacity to do that? Because then I would feel a little bit more comfortable.
So I'm guessing that's either a question for, well, Mr. Stevenson turned his light on, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to amend any regulations for permitted uses on a property, that would be prescribed by the zoning bylaw. So a zoning bylaw amendment would be required in order to restrict future development uses. The property is identified and is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act as such as a Part 4 designated property. Any revisions or additions or new uses would require a heritage permit application, and it would be reviewed by Heritage Kitchener and likely brought forward to council depending on the outcome of that discussion. There are additional uses that are permitted on the property, low-density, low-rise residential uses, but there is no zoning bylaw amendment application before you this evening, so there would be no ability for council to restrict permitted uses.
Okay.
Councillor Schneider, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. Of the remaining lots that will benefit from this, how many lots are there, or how many lots could there potentially be that would benefit from this?
Mr. Spear?
Through the mayor, there were 12 lots that were included in the petition.
Okay, 12 lots. So could any of these be severed and allow for more development on them? Do we know?
Mr. Stevenson?
Through the mayor, so the properties on New Dundee Road, they are being consolidated for comprehensive redevelopment. In fact, council has considered official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments in the last couple of years for those. Because of the location on a regional road, the preferred redevelopment potential of these lots is consolidation with a singular access with a secondary emergency access to New Dundee Road. So the permissions allow for a more intensive low-rise residential use, and that is what we will anticipate over time to see redeveloped here at this site.
Okay, so do we take that into consideration with the charges to these improvements? Because it does appear that the applicant here tonight is paying a very high portion that would likely benefit the other landowners.
Mr. Spear?
Through the mayor, that's not something we're permitted to do at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Davey.
Yeah, I apologize. I mistook the quantum when we first dealt with this in terms of the amount. So I just want to make sure I understand everything clearly. I'm not sure maybe everyone else seems to understand it. I don't quite. So the petition went out, majority of people as per prescribed want this community improvement. The delegate has no interest. They made it clear they just installed the new septic and they won't be using this system for, if they got a brand new system, probably for a number of years, decades plus. And yet we would enforce a fee on them of somewhere around $75,000 they have to pay, even though they would never use the system. And their only recourse is to go to the Court of Revision. Am I right so far?
Through the mayor, that is the way the regulation is written.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, I would be annoyed too. The Court of Revision, supposing that the Court of Revision, I guess because I'm not 100% clear, the Court of Revision agrees with the delegate when they appeal at that portion. Who pays for that differential then?
So through the mayor, any of those reductions would be dispersed across the remaining properties that are included in the petition.
Oh, okay. So that sounds, so yeah, so is there any way, I guess the question we're saying then, is there any way we can provide any assurance then to the delegate that that is indeed how the process works and that they shouldn't worry about it? I mean, that seems pretty cut and dry to me.
Through the mayor, I don't think I can speak for the councillors that are part of that court revision.
Okay, and then, but then to be clear then, so any excess over top of that, so the $75,000, let's say, cutting it in half, that would be spread to the property owners, assuming that the Court of Revision made that decision, that would be spread to the rest of the property owners that actually want this.
Through the mayor, that is correct.
That's very helpful. Okay, thank you.
Councillor, you've already asked questions once, right? Oh, no, I'll come back to you. I just need to go to others first. Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. So we have an approximate amount of about $70,000, $75. Am I correct on that so far? A ballpark.
Right, to be clear, staff have indicated that the estimate is about $1,500 per meter. There's about 100 meters for Mr. Ormston's property, which would mean about $150,000. If you split that 50-50 between sewer and water, and we don't know that that's what the split would be, after a decision by they would, even before a decision of the Court of Revision, staff would adjust the bill accordingly, so they would only get billed for the sewer portion of it. So let's say it's half, it would be $75,000. If the owner of the property feels that amount is not appropriate, they can then appeal to the Court of Revision. And if the Court of Revision rules in favor of the applicant, then whatever dollars they reduce the amount that the applicant owes by would get spread out amongst the other property owners. Is that clear as mud for you?
It's getting late in the day. Okay, so at the end of the day, the owner could still end up being billed $15,000, $20,000 or so.
I don't think, Mr. Spear?
Yeah, through the mayor, again, this is predisposing of a result that would come out of that Court of Revision. At the end of the day, once we have our construction costs, we'll take that water portion out, and then it would be up to the 508 property owner to appeal to that Court of Revision for further reduction if that's what they wish to do.
I'll come back with my comments. Thank you.
So maybe one thing that would be helpful before we continue with questions, if Ms. McDonald or Ms. Fusco can indicate to us, because it's been years and years that as far as I can remember, that the Court of Revision has met. I'm wondering if somebody can just clarify what are the things that the Court of Revision considers, or Ms. Saunderson can consider in the hearing. Like, what's the evidence that they're permitted to consider? Ms. Saunderson?
Apologies. If you can just give me one moment, I'm just pulling up the procedures. I can confirm that the last time the Court of Revision was appointed, it was Councillor Davey, Councillor Singh, and Councillor Ioannidis who were appointed to it. It will depend on when the project is completed as to whether or not the current 3 members appointed will be the ones that will be considering it. The last time the Court of Revision sat, it was for a Drainage Act appeal, so they haven't sat for Court of Revision related to a local improvement since that time. In regards to the current procedures, and we do keep in mind that the legislation has changed just a little bit, but relatively, the processes should be relatively be the same. So the procedures that the committee can consider are so appeals can be debated on cost of work, name of owners on the lot, the frontage or measurements of the lot, the amount of reduction or increase made under section 15 or 16, the lots for which would be exempt from any special charge, the lifetime of the work, the charge per meter to be imposed on any lot, or any or all part of the owner's share of the cost to be specifically charged on the lots not abutting the work. So there are components within the legislation that members of council, when they consider the appeal, would be able to consider.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman, you're next in the queue.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, are the other 12 the owners of the other 12 lots, are they able to go to the Court of Revision? Like, are they part of that process?
Mr. Spear?
Yeah, through the chair, the regulation doesn't discriminate against who can go to that. So any of those 12 parties can go to that Court of Revision.
Okay, but I don't mean to get their own bill reduced, but rather, I think of the Committee of Adjustment. Maybe I shouldn't try to make that parallel, where you can go and speak for or against, what's being proposed. So could they come along and say, no, these guys should pay?
Through the mayor, that's a question we're going to have to get back to you on.
Okay.
Councillor Michaud, back to you.
Thank you. Was there any conversation with Mr. Ormston and staff through this process?
Mr. Spear?
Through the chair, no, outside of the letter that Mr. Gressman had sent.
So was there a response? There was not a response of this at all. So the letter came on the 16th of last month, I guess. So there was nothing. Was there a letter sent to Mr. Armstrong about what was going to happen before? Like when did the communication go out to him?
So through the chair, a petition like this is led by a property owner. Once we receive that petition and it's certified by the clerk notifies all of the property owners that this process is underway and when the council and committee meetings were going to happen. Outside of that, we didn't have any communication with Mr. Ormston.
So the property owners started this whole process then, not the city. This was started by 5 property owners who are interested in developing their property.
Through the chair, it was led by one individual. So there are 2 types of local improvement. There's a city-led local improvement without petition, and there's a resident-led local improvement with petition. This was the resident-led local improvement with petition.
It seems like a very unfair process. I'm not blaming you or anything, but it seems like this is a lot of one petition, but a lot of property owners benefiting from it, of course, which makes sense. Development, we need more homes, but one property owner is affected by this, and there was not any conversation with anybody, just the letter from the lawyer.
Through the chair, we followed the regulation as it's written.
Thank you.
Okay. So that is all the questions. Councillor Davey.
To bring it forward? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis that item 7.2.h be approved.
Okay, any discussion? Councillor Chapman?
Well, I have another question.
Okay.
Is it too late? Sorry about
No,
that.
go ahead.
If we were to reject this proposal, then what? Then the whole installation is canceled? Or is there an opportunity to take out 508 and carry on with the installation on the other properties?
Mr. Spear?
Through the chair, if this doesn't pass, then the project would proceed. Would not proceed.
Which means the houses wouldn't get built. Another question? Okay, I'll let you, since it's your ward, Councillor Michaud.
So this is obviously not going to stop. It's going to go through. We cannot say no to houses, we know that. But I'm hoping that the city can give Mr. Ormston some support on the Court of Revision process and how he can apply for that. And what kind of time frame are we looking for this type of thing? Like, so would this be hanging over his head for years, or is this something that, like, what is the time frame for something to go to the Court of Revision?
Through the mayor, the Court of Revision would, I see that as being something that would likely able to happen in the fall. I don't know how frequently that committee meets, but we should have construction complete by then, have a cost known, and be able to get those preliminary invoices out to the residents with instructions on next steps and how
Okay.
to approach the Court of Revision.
Okay, and just to be clear to council, Mr. Ormston is not objecting to having any improvements done and any developments along the road or the water or sanitary hookups. He just doesn't want to have to pay for something he doesn't need. Thank you.
Councillor Singh, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, just to our staff, I get what the legislation is and through the Court of Revisions, but still, I think it's an avenue for us to help facilitate a community dialogue. Is there an avenue where, if this council chooses, we defer directing staff to go back to, the party that's going to benefit the most with the development and seeing if they would be willing to subsidize some of that cost to this one residence? I'm helping Councillor Michaud, even though she wasn't very nice to me earlier.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Spear. Oh, you turn it off again. Okay, go ahead.
So through the mayor, we're honestly at a bit of a loss on that one. There are 8 people who have signed on to that petition. I don't know what entity we would go to have those negotiations. Is it one of those property owners? Is it all 8 of those? What if they say no? What if one says yes, but the other 7 say no? I'm not sure how we would go into a negotiation with something like that.
Okay, again, it was a suggestion. I'll leave it to the ward councillor to see if she thinks that that's something that she would want to at least entertain to facilitate, because again, she's more aware of the personalities that are related to this. But again, because of wider community benefit, I mean, it's spread across, I think it may not necessarily be as onerous to the larger party, as opposed to one resident who's not expecting it, who's not needing it, and having to pay the bulk of it. But I go back to Councillor Michaud.
Okay. Go. Sorry. Councillor Davey, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just point of clarification if I could. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought Mr. Reedman actually from, when we dealt with this last time, said that there was an urgency in terms of a timing issue to get onto, I don't remember if it was a regional contract, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that isn't lost if we do decide to defer this.
So through the mayor, that is correct. The region is reconstructing New Dundee Road, and they have given us a timeline, a deadline for proceeding with this work as part of their tender.
Okay, and do you know when that deadline, like when would staff need to know then? Because I'm assuming it's today, like by the time that council meets next, but
Through the chair, they were looking for an early to mid-March tender date.
early to mid-March, okay. So I will have comment as well, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Michaud, go ahead.
Yeah, can we defer this and have more conversation with the parties that are involved in this, the parties that did the petition? I mean, they're the ones that are going to recoup the cost, not Mr. Armstrong from this. So no, they'll recoup the cost once they do the development, and they'll build it into the cost of development.
So, Mr. Spear, or I guess really what the question is, the next scheduled meeting of council is March the 17th. Can that still meet your timelines?
Through the chair, I can't speak for the region of whether that meets their deadline or not. They said early to mid-March for their tendering deadline.
Could we ask for an extension on that to the region?
Well, I mean, we can, but I don't know that, yeah, I mean, I can't predict what they'll do. Mr. Spear?
Through the mayor, same comment. I can't predict what they're going to say.
I would like to suggest that we try.
Okay. We can't, sorry, folks, we can't approve with a caveat. We're going to go through the rest of the speakers, and then if you want to move a motion of deferral, Councillor Michaud, I'll take it, and council can decide if they want to accept that or not, and then depending on what that happens, then we'll dispose of the motion that Councillor Davey has moved. Councillor O'Dooney, you're next in the queue.
Yeah, I just had a question for you. Is it even possible for an amendment to be made to this exempting this particular house? Is that possible?
Okay, that's a question of staff, not a question of me,
question of
but
staff.
I don't, Mr. Spear?
Yeah, through the mayor, that would be through the court of revision. So at this point, according to the regulations, we can't make an exemption for one of the properties in that petition area.
So if this is, they make the decision, is that what you're saying? Court of revision?
That's correct.
Okay, and is there an opportunity for an expedited emergency meeting between now and the date she was looking at? Was that March 17th?
Sorry, I'm not clear on what you're asking.
So I'm asking if an amendment could be made to the motion coming to us, saying we can exempt this particular address from.
No, what staff just indicated is that the provincial regulation does not allow us to do that.
It goes to Court of Revision.
It would have to go to the Court of Revision if the applicant applies to go to the Court of Revision.
Okay.
The choice is on the side of the property owner.
Right, so my next question after that was, if it does end up going to a Court of Revision, how quickly or how soon can a Court of Revision meet? That was what my question was.
Ms. Fusco, can you help with that? Or Ms. Saunderson?
So as previously noted, it is an appeal about your invoice. So without knowing what the final cost of the project will be, the property owner doesn't know the amount that they are appealing. So at this moment, staff have committed to the fact that the property owner has water and is prepared to provide an exemption in that regard. So staff have the ability to provide a reduction in charges. So there could be other property owners within the same construction boundary that would have a similar situation. So staff will take that in consideration and issue preliminary invoices. The Court of Revision would then use that preliminary invoice and could opt to reduce the charge to zero if they feel that the opportunity presents itself. But without an invoice and a consideration for the appeal, no decision can be rendered. It is a quasi-judicial body, so once that decision is made, it's similar to the Committee of Adjustment or any other tribunal, their decision would then be final.
And is there an appeal mechanism for the Court of Revision?
Yes, there will be. So the invoices will go out, the Court of Revision would be scheduled, and anybody interested in appealing that decision would then be able to attend the hearing. So the committee will have to sit regardless of.
No, but is there an appeal mechanism to a decision of the Court of Revision?
Thank you. It's been some time since I've done that, and right now the procedure that I have in front of me does not indicate, so I'm going to let Leslie answer.
Ms.
that.
McDonald, then I'll
Thank
go
you.
to Mr. Chapman.
Through the mayor, I don't believe there is an appeal mechanism.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first local improvement that I think I've dealt with in 20 years at the city, so I recognize that this is new to council, and this is even new to many staff around the Horseshoe. My understanding of the process, though, is it's heavily legislated, and council is bound to follow the process. As you've heard, this was a resident-led petition, and so you have two opportunities to make decisions on this application. One is tonight. If you deem that the application has merit, you can approve it. If you think the local improvement does not have merit, you can turn it down. Ultimately, if you're sympathetic to the arguments that are being made by the delegate through the Court of Revision, that is the process by which to make adjustments to the invoice. I appreciate that it will leave a question over the delegate's head around what will happen at Court of Revision. My understanding is, though, the works will be tendered soon, construction will happen, and inside this year, the matter can be settled. And so council, in your comments, can indicate your view on this application in total, your view on the merits of the argument made by the delegate, but ultimately it will be the Court of Revision that has to make that decision on how to adjust the final invoice. And so I appreciate council's desire to work flexibly, but at the end of the day, the process is prescribed. And so the decision tonight is to approve it or to reject it. And if you approve it, then to leave the decision around adjusting the invoice to the Court of Revision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. So it was said that the intention is to, in the future, consolidate these 12 lots. So obviously one person would own all those lots. So it doesn't seem fair to me that this person, that this person has to pay for their gain. And I understand. So if we reject this tonight and it comes back, we wait till the lots are consolidated, how does that process work?
Mr. Spear?
So through the mayor, the process could follow a similar process of a local improvement if a developer wishes to, or a landowner wishes to proceed with this project, or a landowner who needed the servicing for a development, should the lots be consolidated. They could opt to pay for this wholly themselves. At a later date, the cost is going to be more expensive. We do have New Dundee Road being reconstructed this summer. This is an ideal time to try to get those pipes in the ground.
Okay, I'll have comments later.
Well, just further to that, though, if this request was denied, could they not go to the region and simply say, we want to pay for this on our own and install it while you do your work?
Through the mayor, they could. This is the process that they have initiated, that a landowner has initiated, and it's a process that we followed.
Okay. Seem to be a lot of questions yet. Councillor Ioannidis?
I guess I think I heard my answer to my question with regards to it's up to the committee of revision. I don't think it's called Court of Revision. Committee of Revision isn't.
Court of Revision.
I thought it was Committee of Revision. But anyways, regardless, we can debate that another time. I guess so. It really it's my understanding of that court committee. They can designate what they feel is an appropriate amount of fees to. Regardless, they could say they could waive all the fees, or they could prescribe a certain amount. It's up to that discretion of that committee. I just want to be clear.
Sorry, who can answer that?
Through the mayor, that is a correct assumption.
Okay.
And summarizing.
And I have comments when it's ready.
Go ahead.
Okay. I recognize, I don't think we'd be really having this discussion today if Mr. Ormston's property was not designated heritage. I mean, a community improvement plan is actually a good thing for us. It's a good thing for the citizens. It's a good thing for the community. It's just, I feel like this one's got a little bit of a twist to it. And unfortunately, it has to go through that process. And it might not be good for the proponent, or I mean for the Ormston family. But I mean, I think in the end of the day, things will be made right. But I think you just got to go through this process.
Okay, Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a quick, easy question. What would happen if in the future, or in this case, somebody couldn't afford to pay for the charges?
Sorry, go ahead. I have Mr. Spear and Mr. Lautenbach. Mr. Lautenbach?
So through the chair, the local improvement charge would be collected based on their tax bill, so collected as part of taxes, and so it would essentially be transferred as part of their property to property taxes if it wasn't paid.
But what if, so would the whole like $75,000 go on their tax statement?
So typically as part of the local improvement, there would be 10 years to repay that amount plus interest if that was their decision, or they would pay up front if they wanted to fully pay the charge that was identified.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I next have Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're really sort of making this a lot more complicated than it has to be. It's really quite simple. We all want to give Mr. Ormston some assurance today, and we cannot do that. But I think we all also agree that piggybacking onto work that's already being done is the most cost-effective way to make sure that this gets done. And number two, it's not our fault there's this backwards legislative quagmire. But I guess the question I would pose to my colleagues, just to sort of push this along, is at the end of the day, I believe I heard that it's going to be done in the fall. The Committee of Revision, Court of Revision, whatever, is going to meet, and Councillor Singh, Councillor Ioannidis, and myself are sitting on that. So if you have faith in your fellow colleagues that we're going to make people like Mr. Ormston whole, assuming everything is as has been displayed, then I think we can just agree to this and move forward.
Okay, I have several people in the queue yet. I will just caution the members of the committee, because it is a quasi-judicial board, to not be making comments tonight that presuppose an outcome of a decision that you have to make in a quasi-judicial process. Councillor Singh, you're next.
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for outlining that caution. And it's very challenging for us to assume exactly what the judicial body would rule at that time. The decision is before us at this point, where one party will be substantively, egregiously affected, as opposed to another that will assemble large parcels and will benefit from a development perspective. I kind of like what Mayor Varanovich, you said, that possibly if this committee turns it down, that those property owner, or that one property owner, or whoever's going to assemble those parcels could go to the region and request the very same servicing extension through the regional development. But at that point, it's not coming back as a future consideration where the city of Kitchener will have to foot the bill, but it will be the party that's going to benefit the most. I think that may be the better way to go, and that's how I will be not supporting this, and hoping the future developer works with the region to have the servicing as part of the road reconstruction.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. So the property owners who petitioned for this are the ones who will gain when their properties are sold for consolidation. Mr. Ormston receives no benefit from this. He's contributing to those who petition for this. He's contributing to their profits. So any extra cost to those who petition for this will be recouped when they sell their properties for consolidation. So I also agree with what Councillor Singh said. So I think that is probably the best way to approach this.
Go ahead, Councillor David, with your question.
I just need confirmation from what Councillor Singh said. So, because I haven't heard that from staff, we can just kick this up to the region and they're going to handle it, and there's not going to be any additional costs in terms of them already having the road being torn up. Like, I want to make sure we know what we're voting on here. Because
So to be clear, my question was, if council were to vote against this, could the applicant or the proponent go to the region and simply negotiate an arrangement directly with the region to be able to do this? And staff indicated that that was a discussion that they could undertake.
Okay, yeah, it seems.
But they're availing themselves of the process that's outlined in the Municipal Act, which is this process.
Yeah, okay, it still seems a little unclear.
Mr. Chapman.
Through the chair, I just note in the report that there are 12 properties with 9 registered owners. And so it would require an agreement or one party to take the lead to facilitate that with the region. And so it's unclear whether or not that could come together in the time that we're talking about.
And to be clear though, Mr. Chapman, there's 9 registered owners, but I believe 5 of them are actually the same owner, but they're considered as individuals. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to go back to my earlier question, and that's regarding the process of the Court of Revision. Could the other property owners attend that meeting and say, no, we're vote against? Like, did you find anything on it, I guess, in the last little while? No. Because to me, that's key, because, you know, you think of the Committee of Adjustment where you've got the yeses and the nos, and if they're allowed to attend and you know, insist that 508 pays their part, then we've got a problem.
Ms. McDonald?
Through the mayor, in looking at the legislation, I can't find anything that specifically speaks to the conduct of the hearing and whether or not each party could then comment on the other. It's clear in the regulation that the individual property owner may speak on their own behalf, but whether or not the normal recourse is that they all can speak about each other's role in it, it's not clear. We'd have to look at some case law to see what the trend has been.
And if the others wanted to appeal the decision themselves, they could go, they'd all be at the same Court of Revision, or would they all have their own hearing, separate hearing?
I think typically they're all scheduled on the same day.
Right.
It doesn't happen very often, and I've been here a long time, and I can only recall being at one in my time here.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor. So it would also be up to the Court of Revision to make that final decision whether people come to argue or not, and so they would have to make that based on rationale. And so, you know, I think we've heard some rationale from the one landholder today, but we also had the majority of landholders sign this, saying they're supportive of this proceeding.
Okay, Councillor Michaud, you wanted to move a deferral.
Yeah. I'm not sure I want to defer this to the region. I'm not sure I want to do a deferral and go back to the region on this. I'd rather it stay with our city council and Kitchener, as per Councillor Davies.
Oh, sorry, hold on, click yourself back again. Sorry, my mistake. Go ahead.
I'd rather, I think the best route for this to do is to have this go to the Court of Revision. I think it is, and not go to the region. I think it's just going to complicate things with the region. I'm not sure Mr. Armstrong will you know, get the satisfaction that he's looking for. And I feel that it's what Councillor Davey and Mr. Chapman suggested. I think the process, to go through the process, is what we need to do in order for it to hopefully, you know, result in a zero fee for Mr. Ormston.
Okay, so thank you for.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for those comments. So there is a motion on the floor. The motion is to approve this with the noted comments that have occurred. And to Mr. Ormston, you would have then an opportunity to go to the Court of Revision to appeal for the portion that you would still be invoiced. Staff have already acknowledged that they would reduce the invoice for the water because you've already put your own water in place previously. So with that, is everyone clear on the motion? All those in favor? Hold on. All those opposed? That is carried. Thank you both for coming in this evening, and Council for the very thorough discussion on this issue. We'll now move on to reports of the committees. Heritage Kitchener, Councillor Michaud. Okay, I'll come back to you. Finance and Corporate Services, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis that the remaining 7 items from Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Back to you. She's gone now. Councillor Chapman, can you move that recommendation? Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, moved by myself and seconded by, can I say Councillor Michaud or?
No, she's not in the room.
Councillor Johnston, that the minutes from the Heritage Committee be accepted.
And not just the minutes, but the, yeah, the recommendations.
Recommendations,
Okay, thank
sorry.
you. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Council. We've dealt with unfinished business. New business. I do have an item for mayoral updates. Council, as you heard late this afternoon, U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration have announced that they'll be enacting ill-advised tariff framework that will negatively impact both the Canadian and U.S. economies effective at midnight tonight. I guess it's possible that between now and then this might change, but as of now, that is the indication. And we know from both our federal and provincial government counterparts that there will be a swift response from both orders of government. I think it's important that we as council reassure our residents, businesses, and workers that we have been proactively and will continue to work closely with our local government partners, business community, as well as our provincial and federal counterparts to both take measures to understand both the impacts to our local economy and to ensure that we work together in navigating the uncertain trade landscape that will result from this. As council will recall, this council did pass a motion with respect to the tariffs a couple weeks ago, and that motion has doing a number of things, including looking at how we can change our procurement practices, advocating for the elimination of interprovincial tariffs, as well as buy local, buy Canadian initiatives that we plan on working together with our local business improvement associations and other business organizations in the region. Over the last few weeks, there's been a fair bit of work on this file. The Big City Mayors Caucus met a couple of weeks ago, both together. This is the National Big City Mayors Caucus with the Prime Minister, with Foreign Affairs Minister Jolie, as well as Infrastructure and Housing Minister Erskine Smith, where we discussed both the federal and local government response to potential tariffs, as well as what a economic stimulus program can look like if tariffs were brought in place. council will recall, some of you may recall from, or actually not necessarily anyone around the horseshoe, but staff will recall that back in 2008, there was an economic stimulus program that was put in place by the federal government to work with local municipalities, and in fact, that enabled Canada to come out of that recession amongst the best of all G7 countries. This issue has also been on the agenda of the Ontario Big City Mayors recently. I had the opportunity to participate with an FCM delegation in Washington, along with the premiers from across Ontario, including our own premier. There was a meeting a week ago that involved all 7 mayors, the chair, the CAOs, and our directors of economic development, along with Mr. Tony Lamantia from Waterloo Region EDC. And we've also put together an internal committee to look at this issue. I think it's fair to say that this is certainly going to be a challenge, probably unlike anything we've dealt with in our time as a council. But I think it's also important to remember that as a community, and this council has proven ourselves to be strong, resilient, and innovative. And we will continue to do what's necessary to protect our economic interests together with our federal and provincial partners. And I'm convinced that together we will navigate these challenges and ensure that Kitchener remains a thriving and prosperous community going forward. With that, I'll now go to a notice of motion. Councillor Johnson, you had a question on that last item? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Very disappointing to see this happen today, or, well, that we think it's going to happen 11:59 this evening. I'm wondering if, and it's very early for staff to maybe comment on this, but how we're looking at how this will be affecting our budget, and if there's an opportunity, I guess, a regular opportunity to receive updates on how we're proceeding with that in terms of how our budget's going.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the mayor, as council may recall, in the motion that you adopted previously, direction was given to staff to report back at the next meeting of council following the introduction of tariffs. And so assuming that they are implemented tonight, we'll be in front of you at your next meeting to provide an update on a range of issues, including the review of budget for 2026.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, we've all acknowledged and we want to continue on supporting you and your efforts with your other colleagues that are mayors to advocate to buy local, support local, as well as I think some of the changes that needs to be made nationally and intergovernment trade agreements that needs to make our domestic economy function better. One of the things that we can do locally, and I think you addressed it last time, this is something that council has supported through Love My Business. This may be a time, it's hard to see what the next few days are going to pan out, but come towards March 17th, future council committee meeting, that we need to have a strengthened strategy about how do we support our local businesses or addressing our residents, how they can support our local businesses. And I think Love My Business may be the mechanism that we can support it through. So I think it's not things that we need to continue to explore.
Yeah, thanks for that, and I did reference that in my comments with respect to working with our partner business organizations in that regard, and certainly we can make sure that that's part of an upcoming update. So with that, we'll now move on to the notice of motion, and I'll go to Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just read it first.
Sure, go ahead.
Whereas Kitchener City Council strives to be accurate and transparent to the needs of the community, whereas the city's procedural bylaw, Chapter 25 of the Municipal Code, deems the minutes to be the formal public record for the meeting, whereas the council chamber has been retrofitted with an enhanced audiovisual conferencing system with new features that allow for improved voting processes for members, that attend virtually to vote in the same manner as those who are present in the council chamber, whereas there would be greater transparency to the meetings and to the minutes if all votes conducted within meetings were recorded through the conferencing system and reflected within the minutes. Therefore, be it resolved that the city clerk be directed to prepare an amendment to the procedure bylaw to require that when an electronic voting system is available, every member of council or committee present and participating in a vote on a motion, excluding procedural motions, vote on consent items and bylaws shall vote electronically. And therefore, be it further resolved that with an electronic voting system, when an electronic voting system is used for a vote, the results will be displayed and recorded in the minutes of the proceedings. And therefore, be it finally resolved that when an electronic voting system is not available, every member of council or committee present shall vote by a show of hands.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Deneau, thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Chapman?
Well, I'm happy to speak to it, but if somebody else wants to comment,
There's
then I can
nobody
hold
else in the
off. No,
queue.
okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the reason I'm bringing this forward, I mean, it was sort of prompted by the February 10th meeting when one of the members of the community stood up and said, how did everybody vote, right? And I realized that, so that creates confusion the way we're doing it currently with the community. And I realize, with the system that we have now, at the last committee meeting, it was, we were able to adjust the cameras in such a way that if you were watching the video, you might be able to see that vote, but it still doesn't solve the problem for the people that are sitting in the stands. And I think, we talk about being transparent and accountable, and I think that this is the best way to do it. You're looking at me weird.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, so, and I think that if we strictly look at the video, if our only record of how we vote is in the video, what that requires residents to do if they're not watching the meeting live, or they want to go back and look at it, is they have to go through the video. They can't just read the minutes. So by having a recorded vote, it's very clear, it's transparent, and there's no question as to who voted which way. So I just think it's the right thing to do, and that's why I'm bringing this forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There doesn't appear to be anybody. Oh, okay, go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you, sorry. No, thank you, Councillor Chapman, for bringing the motion forward. I think transparency is something we should all strive to go towards. Having said that, when I was reading the motion, I reflected on my years on council, and I honestly don't remember a time when a member of the public ever, other than that one time, had an issue with respect to who voted how. And I would also point out that whenever anyone thinks that a motion is important enough that it be recorded, we all have that option to say recorded vote. If it was just that, I would probably still support your motion, except that, well, two things. First off, clerks have, I believe, just our last meeting, have solved the problem of zooming out so that people can see who is actually voting. And I get that there still isn't a way they can go through and read it. But I mean, there is a method where people can go back and watch who voted if they really care about an item or an issue and we forgot to ask for a recorded vote. But more importantly, I have no life, so I watched a lot of regional council meetings. And I have noticed that they have, I believe it's eScribe, Mr. Mayor, where they vote on, and it's even worse. I often have to ask people after the fact, who voted how, and it also takes a long time. Everyone's sitting around waiting for the votes to come through, and some people online they're having difficulty because their system crashed. It's not a good system, and I don't think it's worth going down that road and making our meetings even longer for something that I really, if I'm being honest, has never been a problem for me in the past. So all that is to say, I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman, you've already spoken, but sorry, no, there is no other comments. I'll make some in closing, but go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to say that I often don't remember to ask for a recorded vote. And then I think later, shoot, I should have asked for a recorded vote. So this, and I don't know if anybody else has had that experience as well. And I also think it creates greater confusion for the chair, because now, from what I understand, we now have to push another button to get the camera to come out in order to do that vote. So again, I think, you know, it's all about transparency and accountability. And if we talk about doing those things all the time, and I really think that this is an opportunity to ensure that we live up to that.
So thank you. So I'll just make a brief comment, and thank you, Councillor, for bringing forward the motion. I guess two things come to mind. Yes, I'm aware that there was the question of that one vote, and that's the first time in my time on council I can recall that occurring, and that, to be frank, was people not necessarily just wanting to know who voted how, but was questioning whether or not the 2/3 amount was reached, and in fact it was reached. Sorry, in fact it wasn't reached, and hence why we weren't in a position to reconsider the motion that was being considered that day. I think this button does, in fact, has added transparency, and the minutes do reflect the votes of council. As has been noted, any time a member of council wants to ask for a recorded vote, they're certainly free to do so. And in my 30 years on council, there's been many historical votes where that, or votes that were considered important where that has occurred. At other times, the minutes simply reflect if it passed or failed. And if a member of council wanted it noted what their vote was, they also had the ability to request that be noted in the minutes, and that certainly has happened over time as well. So I also won't be supporting the motion that's before us today.
Vote, please.
You absolutely can. So, with no other, if I can ask people to vote, please. Okay. And that motion does not carry. Okay. Sorry, we'll now move on to questions and answers. Sorry, are there any questions and answers? Can you, yeah, you have to click in. Oh, you were not. Okay, go ahead. It wasn't on. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. As we all know, we had lots of questions from residents over the last couple of weeks with respect to snow removal. And first of all, I'd like to say that our staff did a really, really great job. I know that they put in lots of overtime, and we haven't seen anything like this since 2013, so it was quite the phenomena. One thing that I have been asked from residents about was whether or not we could look into snow removal equipment that would be able to scoop out the end of people's driveways whenever the snow plow went past, and I'm wondering if that's something that we can comment on.
Ms. McGoldrick.
Yeah, so through the mayor, and thank you for your feedback, Councillor Johnston. So absolutely, a few years ago, staff did investigate plow technology that would basically put a gate to prevent windrows from occurring at the end of driveways. At the time, the technology was really built for rural roads with large frontages, not so much urban roads with very tight frontages. So it wasn't very effective in urban areas. What we're seeing, and we've certainly seen social media posts from other urban centers in terms of the technology, and so we are going to take another look to see what are the costs, what are the opportunities, how efficient can we be in terms of operating the equipment, and reach out to other municipalities to understand their experiences. We have not done that while we've been in the midst of winter, but our commitment is to do that following this winter season.
Yeah, and thank you for looking into that. I think that that's going to be really important. It's not a question that I'll think about in June, but certainly it's kind of top of mind right now to be asking about that. My other question around snow removal as well, and is probably something that's more so for bylaw, but lots of complaints with people not clearing their sidewalks. First of all, residents not clearing their sidewalks, but as well, commercial properties not clearing their sidewalks. And I know that bylaw, we're very busy with ticketing vehicles that were parked on the road. It was kind of all hands on deck. I just had this pointed out to me from a number of residents that whenever commercial properties don't do it, especially if they're on busy roads, people are forced to, sometimes walk down Victoria Street, et cetera. I don't know who can comment on this, but is there a way of looking at doing things differently, perhaps with our commercial businesses?
So through the mayor, I can certainly take the question away for Mr. May and our Director of Bylaw, Ms. O'Neill. And one of the things I will say is that this winter season, we've been blessed with some fairly mild winters. This winter season has seen, to your point, snow that we haven't seen in over a decade. And certainly in terms of the back-to-back, significant and large amounts of snow accumulation. I would even say that even back in 2013, 2014, we didn't see that back-to-back level of snowfall. And so for us, this is a bit unprecedented in terms of the amount of snow that needed to be removed. What we will be doing, and Gloria and I have had this conversation, Ms. Lusk and I have had the conversation in terms of needing to conduct a debrief following this winter. I think there's really a lot of good lessons learned that we can apply and look at how we can improve things moving forward.
Yeah, thanks. And I think a debrief is important. Maybe if even sending that same questionnaire out to council so that we can share some of our thoughts from residents as well would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just noticed as, I guess, in the midst of clearing the snow, I'm seeing a lot more potholes, and I'm anticipating a lot of those emails are going to start coming in from constituents in reference to that. I don't know who could speak to it. When exactly do we start patching those up? Is it more springtime? I don't remember or recall how that currently works, and would love if there is any clarification in regards to that.
Ms. McGoldrick?
So through the mayor, when we are in normal winter operations, pothole repairs happen continuously through the winter. And so typically we have dedicated pothole crews that can keep up with the potholes as they're reported. And we have a road patrol that regularly monitors for potholes and then addresses them. This winter, and certainly following the February 13th event, we have not been in normal winter operations. All of our crews have been redirected to snow loading and snow removal. And so we have had a skeleton crew for pothole repairs. But as we are, Mother Nature has been on our side last week and will be on our side this week, we are redirecting all resources to pothole repairs. And so you will see a blitz, and we'll be promoting that blitz through our communications channels, but we'll be redirecting staff resources through to pothole repairs because the state of the roads are not what you would normally expect at this time of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all the questions and answers. We'll move on to bylaws. Madam Clerk, are there any additional bylaws to what's already listed for first and second
So
reading?
through the chair, there is one additional late starter bylaw related to the new Dundee local improvement. The other two bylaws for King Street East have been struck given the previous decision.
Okay, and I will ask for somebody to move the bylaws. Moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Deneau. All those in favor Opposed, that's carried. Move that the committee resolve itself into the committee of the whole. All those in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. Is there a mover for the balance of the administrative reports listed on the committee of the whole? Councillor Schneider, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. It's,
Move that the committee rise and report.
is there a mover? Oh, you're mover. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so it's been moved by myself, that it's been, and seconded by Councillor Deneau, that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interest and the conflicts taken in this meeting, in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes be and the same and hereby adopted and confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion for third reading of the bylaws with the additional bylaw moved by Councillor Owaduni, seconded by Councillor Michaud. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to adjourn moved by Councillor Schneider, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.